I'll begin again. So today's session is getting a first job in data science, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Durga Kant Gupta, and he's a speaker for today. He's currently a senior data scientist at Info Edge Limited, and he's also an IIT Kanpur alumni. His current focus is on machine learning and deep learning models for spam and fraud related projects. And he has also worked in the past in response modeling and time series forecasting as well. So, before we start, we will be just to remind you that we will be taking your questions later. So, don't forget to type in your questions regarding data science in the chat box, in the live chat box that we have, and we will be addressing them after the presentation. So without any further delay, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Niharika.
Yeah.
And really sorry for the early hiccup. So hope I'm audible.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so hi, hello everyone. A very good evening to each one of you. I hope you are having a wonderful time, and I'll try to make sure that the next 40-45 minutes are also well spent. So without further ado, I'll quickly start with the today's agenda. So I'll start first with my journey into data science. How did I get into this field? And then I'll discuss data science as an industry and the different roles that it offers. Then we'll delve deeper into the key topics that companies evaluate you on during different interviews, and the skill set and the courses that you should focus on. And both of these sections I'll try to cover in tandem, because whenever I will be discussing about a particular topic, let's say statistics, I'll also try to cover what are the different learning resources. And then we'll talk about adding different relevant projects to your CV. And last but not the least, the floor will be open for question and answer round. So moving on with my journey into data science. So I graduated from IIT Kanpur in 2018. I did my bachelor's in biological sciences and bioengineering, and then my master's in industrial and management engineering. So like many of you, like I also had that goal in mind when I joined college, that I want, after 4 years, I want a good placement. So with that goal in mind, I had to start looking for different career options. And so it's a funny story that one of my super senior, whom I knew very personally, he got placed in, I guess, housing.com, and he got 18 lakhs per annum of package. And he joined that company as a web developer. So after hearing this news, I was like, okay, web development seems to be a very cool thing. Let me try it out. So in next winter intern, I kind of joined a startup. I worked there for a month or 1.5 months. And later, after that intern, I kind of realized that no, this is not my cup of tea, and I won't, basically I don't like it that much. Similarly, I also tried the same thing for the coding or the programming part. So I did try out a lot of programming, but after that I felt like, okay, this is also not my cup of tea. I'm not liking it that much. But again, as your seniors are always there with you, some of the seniors told me that, okay, mathematics or stats is a I mean, if you do some of these courses, you will basically have some edge during placements. So I think, okay, that was a something. And that point of time, I kind of took this regression analysis course from mathematics department, and that was my first introduction to data science as a stream or field. And after that course, I also got some opportunity to work in different internships. So I joined India Mart in my third year summer intern as a business analytics intern. And similarly, in fourth year, I joined Illusory Data Inc. as a data scientist. And these interns actually gave me that corporate exposure which I needed. And I got to realize that, okay, this is the actual data science. These are the kind of industry problems that we are trying to solve using data science. And there are a lot of career opportunities. People are getting paid pretty well in this field. And after that, I kind of realized that, okay, this is the field that I want to pursue even further. And that's when I actually decided to convert my UG program to a master's or a dual degree program. And that's why I did my master's in industrial and management engineering. They offer a lot of analytics or data science courses along with the business or management courses. I selectively took a lot of data science related courses. So after college, I joined American Express as a business analyst. I was there for last 3 years, and there also it was a pretty good stint. I learned a lot, but since I'm still in my early career, I didn't want to spend or did want to stay at a single place for a long time. I did want to explore a lot of other things, and my inclination was more towards data scientist role. So yes, I did make that move, and I joined InfoEdge as a senior data scientist. Talking about InfoEdge, I think it's a the data science team here is doing a wonderful job. We have lots and lots and lots of data available, and we have lots of problems to solve. So fingers crossed. Okay, I think enough of me. So but the only point that I wanted to bring out from this slide is that you need to keep exploring things. If you don't, then probably you will stuck somewhere which you don't like for a long time, right? So yeah, do keep exploring things. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so on this slide, I'll be talking about the data science as an industry and the different roles, basically the different roles that it offers. So I basically divided it into three main categories. The first one is analytics, then data engineer, and then data scientist. So the analytics bucket would kind of uh, so basically business analysts and the business intelligence engineer, these two roles would fit into this category. Then we have data engineer. So data engineers are folks who actually build the data pipelines, data infra, etc. And then data scientist, this bucket, I'm also including machine learning engineer also in this bucket only. Because machine learning engineers, the only difference is that they do probably more programming, high-end programming. Okay, so in terms of skill set, if we talk about programming, so in analytics roles, the business analyst or the business intelligence engineer, there the level of programming, I mean, it's very basic. Basically, most of the time you will be using SQL only. But again, I mean, I can't say this very surely because it depends a lot depends on the different companies, like what profile they are offering, but what kind of work you are actually doing in that company. Because in American Express, when I was working as a business analyst, I was like doing some really fancy stuff on related to machine learning also. So that's definitely there is no hard and fast rule that which profile will get you what kind of work. It really depends on the company itself. So in case of data engineer, the programming skills required are very advanced because you will be creating those data lakes and data infra. For data scientists and machine learning engineers, yes, programming is required. I mean, a decent amount of programming is required. Talking about machine learning now, for analytics roles, again, it's a subjective. It's not required. It's not required as if, but again, it depends which company you are working in. But for data scientists, it's a must. Data scientists and machine learning engineers, machine learning is must. I mean, the very good knowledge is required. Talking about probability in statistics for analytics roles, very basic. Similarly, for data scientists, also a very basic knowledge is required. But for data engineers, there is no need. Second last is the metrics or the case. So these are basically the case study rounds that normally happens in each data science interview. For analytics, I mean, they focus a lot on case study because they are not checking you a lot on other technical aspects. So case study is something using which they are actually, identifying how is your business acumen, analytical thinking, critical thinking, etc. For data engineer, I mean, it's not, it's a very basic thing. Again, for data scientists vis-a-vis machine learning engineers, I would say for data scientists it's required, but for machine learning engineers, again, it's a basic, pretty basic. In terms of non-technical, this is kind of the HR or behavioral line. So I think every company and every role would need that. So yeah, do prepare. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so starting with the key topics that actually you need to prepare while preparing for data science interviews. And the first one is probability in statistics. I think it's a no-brainer. It's actually the real foundation of data science. So I'll directly actually try to mention that what are the resources that you can go through. So the first one is the Probability in Stats course by Khan Academy, and I really love it. You will get to know the concepts like probability theories, normal distribution, different sampling distributions, and like hypothesis testing, confidence interval, p-value, etc., etc. So, and then Khan Academy also has this YouTube playlist, statistics playlist on YouTube. But I would highly recommend that if you have decent amount of time before interview, then definitely first check out the course, probability and stats course, and then go through the videos on statistics playlist of Khan Academy. And the last is StatQuest. This is a channel that I love this channel. Uh, it is by Josh Stammer, and this guy actually plays guitar while starting videos. It's very funny, and he explains very difficult concepts like very easily. So I would definitely recommend these three resources for probability and statistics. Let me move to the bread and butter of data science. So it's programming in Python and SQL. So please don't overburden yourself. Don't confuse yourself. I think when you are trying your first job, Python and SQL are enough. Definitely enough. So these are the must-have skills. You need to embrace it. And if you do it well, these skills can take you a long way. Now, when I talk about programming, so very, very basic data structures, algorithm exposure is kind of good to have. Again, it depends on company to company. Like some of the companies do focus on programming rounds, and they do give you really difficult questions. Although, but I guess those are mostly for the machine learning engineer role. For data scientists, it depends. Most of the cases, people don't go that deep inside the data structures and algorithm part. And so, but what I did during my interview preparation is that because I wasn't that much interested also in doing all those complex problems from data structures and algorithms, so I did try solving 100 beginner level questions on lead code. So whenever you are learning a language, like let's say you are learning Python, so I think you can go to this lead code or any other competitive programming platform for that matter and solve the very, let's say, beginner level questions. With that, actually you will get that syntax practice also, and you will get to know the different logic when you are solving a particular problem. What should be your approach while solving a particular problem. So those things will be pretty helpful during interviews. And I think a lot of people would be already knowing that on an average around 70 to 80% of the time of a data scientist goes into data cleaning and data preparation only, right? So it's better to learn these basic skills pretty well so that you can save that time of yours. And again, in terms of resources, I would put this code basics Python tutorial YouTube playlist, especially pandas and numpy videos. This is a pretty good resource that I found. During my preparation also, I kind of went through these videos. I learned a lot. And the good point is that while you are learning from Code Basics, Code Basics is a YouTube channel. The person name is Dhaval Patel. So he explains you things from the very beginning. And I think he has made this channel only for the beginners, right? And people can learn it from the very scratch. And in every video, I guess he has this habit of implementing stuff, and he will be also providing you the code on the GitHub link. So I think it's a pretty easily accessible thing, so definitely check it out. And the last point is basically one of the course that I did during my very initial 4, 5 or 6 months of data science when I joined after college. So yes, this is a course on Udemy. So I think it's a very small course and a very cheap also. So you can definitely try it out under $500. Okay, so another point that I wanted to mention is that during college days and even during my internships, I did most of the times R only. So I was very comfortable with R, and when I even joined American Express, there also I did some of the time series projects in R only. But the point is, I think everyone would agree with me now that Python is more versatile, and one time or the other you have to shift to it, you have to learn it. So the earlier you learn it, the better it is. So definitely I think I would recommend Python and SQL only. Okay, so let's move to the next. Well, this is machine learning and deep learning, I think. Okay, so the first course as a beginner, I think that you need to do is the machine learning course on Coursera by Andrew Ng. Andrew Ng is a well-known figure in data science and artificial intelligence domain, and I'm sure that a lot of people, I mean, most of you would have already heard his name. So that course is a must. Then again, sorry. Then the machine learning playlist and the deep learning playlist by the Code Basics channel, right? So the deep learning playlist by this Code Basics channel is also pretty great. I mean, the guy starts from the very beginning, and you can, at least for interview preparation, where if let's say, okay, so my point or take here is that in most of the interviews, if they are not specifically specifying that you need deep learning expertise, then I think you basically just need to go through a particular YouTube channel or a particular course where you get the idea that what deep learning is, how are different models built. If you don't have that much of exposure already, right? Because in deep learning, you need to get those projects, because in, let's say, if I was in Amex, I wasn't getting that much exposure to deep learning. So I did not have a lot of things on my resume pertaining to deep learning. So, but again, it's not required in each and every company. So it depends which role you are going into. So no need to worry about it a lot. But yes, given you are still preparing for your first data science interview, you don't need to know everything in and out, right? And the interviewers are also not expecting everything from you, that you need to answer each and every question. So just chill. uh, okay, so now moving on to the next. Again, the StatQuest channel I already mentioned. So the StatQuest channel, the machine learning playlist is, I mean, I would highly recommend this also, because again, as I mentioned, that this guy explains things in a very simple manner, and there were few very difficult concepts that I was struggling to understand. I tried a lot of different blogs, but when I got to know about this video series, and when I watched his videos, I actually kind of understood those concepts pretty well and very soon. So concepts like in XGBoost, like what's happening inside the hood, how does it behave differently for a classification task versus a regression task, or let's say how when does this parallel computation picture come? Those kind of questions I actually was struggling to understand on my own, but I think these videos definitely helped me a lot. And okay, so other than this, I would mention the different blocks that you need to go through time and again. So one is towards data science and analytics vidya, and then there is this machine learning mastery blocks by Jason Brownlee. So these are the three resources I was kind of constantly checking out, because see, one of the advantages in going through different blocks is that, let's say, if you're working or if you're learning about logistic regression, in these different platforms, different people have written different blogs, and each people, contribute something else compared to the other person. So you get that whole picture on a single concept, and those blogs actually really help during interviews, because a lot of interview questions are very tricky, and these blogs actually kind of try to answer those interview questions. So I would highly recommend going, let's like make it a habit of going through these blogs whenever you are free, or I mean, whenever you're preparing for interviews, obviously we'll go through. Okay, the next point is that whenever we are taking up a new problem or a challenge, even in an industry or a corporate fashion, the problems are always kind of new. So a lot of research is always required, even when you have solved a similar problem. But now this time you would feel like, okay, I need to optimize it further. What are the different angles that I tried from? So that research habit is always required. You need to also inculcate that within yourself. Yeah, so I think this is me on machine learning and deep learning. So let's move on to the next topic. Okay, now the attributes assessed during interviews. So this mostly pertains to the case study round, and as I mentioned that these case study rounds are mostly to check your business acumen, analytical thinking, and critical thinking skills. Again, for data science, data scientist versus business analyst. Business analysts, it's a must, but for data scientists also a lot of companies do focus on these attributes. So like Facebook, Google. So there can be questions like why the sales of a company is going down, or it can be like how do we increase the adoption of Google Meet. So I actually appeared for one of the Google interview, and there I got this question: how do we increase the adoption of Google Meet? So these are the questions. I mean, these are very seems like a very generic question, but you need to have a proper framework in your mind, like how do you how you should approach these questions. So for business acumen, I think that it's basically about the ability to think practically and strategically about the bigger picture. The next is the ability to break, and the analytical thinking is basically the ability to break down a problem into key components and then solving those key components one by one. And critical thinking is something, is basically when you are trying to solve a problem, right? You need to make certain assumptions that okay, this is the actual situation. Can I assume this? Can I assume that? And you need to talk with interview, think loud during interviews. And the next point is about communication. I would, I mean, can't emphasize it more. It's basically much, I would say that it's much more important than what you think it is. And I think not directly or indirectly, people do kind of notice that how better are you able to communicate or not? Because in data science also, it's kind of a storytelling, right? You have built model which is, let's say, predicting something, your accuracy is this and that. But the point is, when you are going to the leadership team, you are basically proposing that, okay, this should be our strategy. These are the numbers. But how does that story is you are kind of presenting to the leaders is very important, right? And not just leaders, but basically the different partners, the marketing partners, because at the end, they are, if you're working with a marketing team, they are the ones who will actually make your model live, right? So those are the things. So communication is very important. Now let's talk about the adding relevant projects in your resume. So again, I mean, people can take a lot of generic data sets like the Titanic data sets or the credit card fraud data set and start working on it. Those things I would say are good to start with, to learn with. But if somehow you can get to work on some real data if possible, that would be very beneficial. So let's say if you are a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, in your department, I mean, your professors must be having some data and they might be trying to solve a certain problem, right? So try to work on that data also, the real data, like, I mean, identifying the real problems. And that would be a very good habit, and that will actually be, you know, really visible in your resume. Because if you've worked, if you say that I've worked on this classification problem on Titanic data, because those things are now getting old, right? People know, okay, these are the problems. And because you need to source, you need to stand out from your resume itself, because in every hiring process, the first part is the resume itself and resume shortlisting. So you need to cover, kind of pass that out. Yes, the next point I would like to highlight is that you need to try hard to get winter and summer internships. If because the both of the internship that I got, one at India Mart and another was at a startup called Elusi Data. Both of these internships actually helped me a lot, and both of the interns that I got, both were basically I got it from off campus. I mean, in campus it was very difficult because very few companies wasted, and and there was a lot of competition. So anyways, you have to try off campus, kind of reach out to your seniors. So in case of India Mode, what happened exactly that one of the VP visited IT Kanpur for a talk, and I actually connected with that person on LinkedIn or Facebook somewhere, and I asked him just if there is a position related to an internship in business analytics, and he said he'll get back. And the next day he forwarded my resume, and once your referral is from a VP, it's like no need of interview also, that kind of scenario. But yes, I did appear for the interview and I got selected. So the point is that you need to keep trying and build your good network on LinkedIn. And again, next point is the Kaggle dataset. So yes, Kaggle dataset, Kaggle platform do have some real datasets, so you can try different problem statements from there and try it out, and then you can put it in your resume. So I think the problems that you can pick is basically in your resume, there should be one problem related to classification, one related to regression, then one clustering, and if possible, try to put a time series problem as well. Because if you have put time series, I feel like it stands out because a lot of people don't put that. So yeah, let's move to the hiring process. So in terms of hiring process, I would say there is not much of a difference. The campus hiring vis-a-vis the lateral hiring. I mean, so campus hiring, at least in IT, is very, or in NITs probably, or in any engineering college for that matter, I think the hiring process is very streamlined. People already know, students were like already know what's expected and what are the different rounds. So campus hiring, I mean, resume shortlisting is the first criteria. Then there would be one aptitude coding or ML based test. This would be a screening test, just a filtering test. And after that, the panel members will take the interviews, and the interviews again will be based on stats, ML, DL, and programming. And last round would be HR or a behavioral round, and then the offer. Similarly, for lateral hiring, also resume sorting is the first criteria, then phone screening. So phone screening is something that they just want to check out whether I should be investing enough time on this candidate or not. It's around half an hour generally. And then if that's clear, then probably 3, 4, or 5 rounds for on stats, ML, DL programming. And I think the extra thing in lateral hiring could be this case study on real data. People just would probably give you some real data that or a problem that they are trying to solve, and then they will ask you to make recommendations, get the insights. So a lot of things are judged basis that, and then there will be HR round and then offer. So I think this is about the hiring process. Okay, so now I think we are pretty much towards the end of the session. So few final points from me is that, and the first one is the most important, that you need to choose a path. Given that there are different roles and each role has different requirements, so you can't learn like everything, right? So you need to first decide like how much you are comfortable with the programming. If you like it very much, then yes, go ahead for the machine learning engineer role. If you say that no, programming is not my cup of tea, I don't like it that much, so then probably you can go for business analyst, right? That role. And if you're somewhere in between, then data scientist is a good option. So definitely, I will again reemphasize it that first you need to decide, keep your head clear that what do you want to do for a long period of time, and that's why prepare accordingly. Because if you prepare everything, things will take time, and getting an offer will take a lot of time. Next is you have to be confident during your interviews, and you have to again just remember that no one is fully prepared, and you're also not expected to know each and everything. The interview is not expecting that you have to answer 100% of questions right. So yes, that's another point, just to boost your morale, that do know that interviewer is also expecting that okay, you might not be able to answer some of the questions. Another question that people might ask is that when can they start applying for jobs? This is in case of for lateral hiring, because in case of campus, the dates are fixed. People know that when the companies are visiting, and we need to prepare by then. But in case of lateral hiring, as soon as you start feeling like okay, I have covered most of the concepts decent in decent enough depth. So yes, I kind of should start looking for interviews. And the point is that you should start applying for interviews, because applying for interviews, getting calls from interviewers, is it takes a lot of time. So do apply, I mean do start applying. And when you start applying, the first, second, third interviews would be like, okay, I mean it's not it would be very difficult to get uh, a job in during your first, second, or third interview, because I mean, again, it depends, but yeah, the point is that the interview process itself is sometimes becomes so long, because a lot of companies are testing different things. When you go to the interview room, you will feel that, okay, these are the mistakes that I made in this interview. And again, yeah, this was one of my point, that you have to take every interview seriously, because again, this is sometimes for some people, it might become a long process. After, I mean, few rejections, you might feel demotivated, but again, just take it as a learning process, because in every interview you are learning something. For when you are preparing for an interview, you are learning something, and that intensity of learning is pretty great when you are going for an interview. So definitely just go for interviews, apply for interviews, jobs, and learn from your mistakes. And okay, the second last point that I missed is basically about the LinkedIn profile. So you do need to update your LinkedIn profile. I mean, during my college days, I think we were not that much aware, but yes, nowadays, I mean, people from second year onwards itself, they start building their profile. So yes, uh, just keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. Be in touch with your college seniors, whomever you know personally, and reach out to recruiters for off-campus internships. Off-campus jobs is a difficult, I mean, for college students it's difficult, but internships still, you can try that out. Okay, so I think it's time for questions. And okay, before we start with the questions, I wanted to call out few names. So Rajiv Jain is one of my seniors from IT Kanpur, and he was director in MX also. And his channel is That Wise Advice. Similarly, for Dhawal Patel, the Code Basics channel, and Emma, the channel is YouTube channel is Data Interview Pro. So these are some of the channels from where I took a lot of inspiration, and also while preparing these slides, I took a lot of kind of motivation from there and some content from there. So that's why I just wanted to call that out. Okay, so I think Niharika, over to you for
Yeah.
questions.
Yes, we do have some questions. One question that I have in the live chat, and which we got even during the registration process when some people put in their queries, is that if someone is from a non-tech background, is it possible that they can get into data science?
Yeah, so uh, for by non-tech, basically he's not from an engineering background, sort of, right? So
Yeah.
yes, I mean, because it's a tech field, so for engineers it's always an edge. But as I said, like if you are completely from a non-tech background also, you can learn things in 6 to 7, 8 months. I mean, you can be at a good place. So you, again, you have to start from the very basics. Prob stats is, it's like a course, right? Data science is kind of a course. You need to consider everything together. You can start one prob and stats course, another on programming, another on, let's say, so the different concepts that I covered. So but the main point is that when you are learning data science, there is a lot of things to cover, and you need to be good at all of them. So while learning these in tandem, these concepts in tandem, you need to just make sure that your momentum is keep going. Because if you're getting stuck at a single point, or if you're learning, let's say, regression analysis, and that's taking a lot of time, so you might feel demotivated. So just because if you're trying for first job, then I would say don't go too much in depth in the very beginning. Because so like the code basics channel, I think that much depth is pretty sufficient, and those kind of concepts should do well. Those kind of videos should suffice.
Huh. So, the next question, I'm preparing for interviews. So, which topics do I have to study for? So, I think you've pretty much covered the interview
Yes, yes.
topics. That
topics I
you in your
picked.
slides itself. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Someone says that they are a data science intern. How can they start their career into data science? I think
Sorry.
that also you have thrown a bit of light on.
Sorry, what was the question?
I've been working as a data science intern. How can I start my
Okay.
career into data science? And is coding that much important? Like, how important is coding going to be?
So as I mentioned, right, coding level is basically decides which stream of particular profile of data science you would get into, right? If you're not liking coding, then I think business analyst is something that you can go ahead with. But again, some basic coding would be required everywhere because you need to look at data, you need to get that data, you need to make some insights out of it. So yes, basic coding is required, but as your comfortability with the coding increases, the profile changes, the data scientist and then machine learning engineer for the top end coding. Yes.
Right. Okay, so there is one question that here also someone has asked here, and I also observed it that a lot of people had posted that like as a fresher, how can they begin their career into data science? What kind of skill sets should they pick up? What kind of tools, technologies, or any softwares they should learn?
Yes.
Like especially as freshers when they are starting out and with no prior experience.
Yes. So I think that's what I covered during my slides also, that as a fresher, you don't need to worry too much about the coding and a lot of different skill set. Just start with Python and SQL. If you are good with it, believe me, you will get a very good paying job. So, but
Right.
once you start at a decent company with a decent package, then later at a later stage you can actually expand your horizon. Basically, you can learn some big data skills because during when after the machine learning model is built by a data scientist, it's it's need to be go live, right, in production. So there's some you need to optimize it further. So those kind of skill set can be you can develop later, but in the very early, I guess Python and SQL should do the job and don't worry too much.
So actually, the next questions are related. So someone is asking what type of questions do companies ask in SQL, in SQL, and also another question on Python. What are the basic technical questions asked in Python?
So I mean, we don't have time to cover all the questions, but the questions would
Uh,
be, it depends on which kind of round you are into, right? If they are checking your programming skills, then they will give you a simple programming question where you will have to code it, probably some for loops, and basically they will be trying to see if you can think logically. They might be giving you a question uh, where you have to at least think for 5 minutes and then write code like how do we solve this particular problem. So that's about problem solving. In specifically related to data sets also, they might ask you a few questions like this is a pandas. I mean, this is the data set we have got into the data frame. How do we sort it? How do we filter it out? How do we group by, and all those kind of stuff. So those can, once you learn Python, I mean, those questions will already be covered. But again, while preparing for interviews, you need to go through some of the resources. There might be some resources related to interview questions itself, like what kind of questions are they getting into interview, because in interview the questions would be a bit trickier, which thinking on your feet might be a bit difficult, but again, if your fundamentals are strong, then you should be able to do that. But and I mean, an extra mile in the preparation always helps. So yeah.
right. The next question is, do you like, is it a must to learn SQL in data science? I think you
I would say
mentioned
yes,
already.
because without SQL, I mean, because that's the first step, right? And it's not that hard. If you can learn Python, SQL is like just 10% of that. So why don't you start with that? I mean,
Right.
because in a lot of companies, when leaders ask some questions, because they have to make some judgments, or let's say they say that I'm thinking that the revenue is down because of this. So you have the data set, you basically need to just run a query and get those numbers out with a CEO, or I mean whatever leader that you're talking with, and they can take a decision that okay, this is the reason that might be happening. and this could be done pretty fast. There is no need of Python also. You just need a SQL code, just a SQL query, simple query. And hardly there would be, 15, 20 or 25 concepts or in SQL or the kind of queries. That's all. You don't need to worry a lot. Just,
Right.
try it once.
And okay, do data science need to have knowledge of Hadoop, Spark, big data, and cloud?
I mean, it depends on companies, but as data scientist, you do not need all that. I mean, some companies do have full stack data scientists, and they do need these kind of skill set. But this kind of skill set is required at a later stage, where you are trying to basically put your model into production. So at that point of time, but as a data scientist, it's not needed that you need a lot of things. You need to know a lot of things from the big data perspective. And once you join a company, this learning will keep on going, right? But for data engineers, I guess those concepts might come pretty handy. So that might be, yeah.
That actually brings me to my next question, because someone has asked, is big data greater than data science? I'm not very clear with that question, but to elaborate, there was one question we had got during the registration process, that what is the difference between a data analyst, data engineer, and a data scientist? I think this is a very commonly asked question.
Yeah, so I think I did cover that with different skill set, like what is expected in which role, right? So for analyst again, there would be a lot focus on the case study rounds. You need to understand that they will be checking your business acumen, the logical thinking and all, because they are not checking a lot on your technical skills, right? Only SQL is required, basic Excel. So, but as you move towards the different ladder, let's say if you are talking about data scientists, there the Python and the good knowledge in Python is required. The SQL is required. The case study round will always be there. Like Google and Facebook, they do check a lot of your skills on like business acumen. How do you think? How do you solve a problem? How do you tackle a problem? And later stage, they do focus on the technical skills also, and the probability and statistics also. So it really depends. Which I've actually already covered that, which for which profile, what do you need, and that's why in the end also I mentioned categorically that you need to choose a path, because that's very important before you start preparing for your interviews or your first job. Because obviously it depends on a lot of companies. These roles are again overlapping. As I said that I was a business analyst at Amex, but I was doing hardcore data science there, and that's why it was easier for me to switch as a data scientist when I joined as a senior data scientist at InfoEdge. So it depends on company to company, but I think role wise, yes, skill sets are different. That's required.
Right. So I think we do have a few more questions, but I don't think we have much time left. So I think we can wind it up. And thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for putting in the effort for the presentation. And I'm sure, and everybody who's watching, please do put in your feedback, like how did you like the session? Was it useful? And also thank you all of you, really grateful that you could attend and you could post in your questions. Hope that we were able to help you out with our answers.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was a great time, I guess, discussing with all of you, and I'm really excited to see that a lot of people joined. And in campuses, I think nowadays data science is the new cool stuff, right? So yes, people are interested and believe me that this is I think the golden time to be in this field, because 5-6 years back I did not have much idea while I was even interning at India Mart, or while I was preparing. I was in my third year or fourth year, but nowadays I see that the awareness level is really high now. So yeah, that's a good sign, and all the best to each and every one of you for your next job, next interviews.
Yeah. So good thing is that a lot of people really like the session. They are pouring in thank yous and loved it and everything. So thank you so much, Durga.
Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
Niharika. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye bye.